Hey there, how are you today? Sort of Merry Christmas. It's that time of year, I guess. It's the three of us back again to talk about the next installment in the 50-pound project.
Hi, today we're going to talk about a Via Sarchi from the same producer as last month. It's from Milagros Sanchez, and the coffee was produced at the Sumava de Lourdes micro mill in the West Valley of Costa Rica. Jordan's brewing it up for us right now. This is a really interesting one because you think Costa Rica Via Sarchi. It's actually quite common for specialty coffee in Costa Rica to be composed of Via Sarchi. We buy lots of this variety from people like Jaime at Sin Limites or Ricardo at Santa Lucia, and even from Sumava, like the farm at Sumava itself. But what makes this one special is that we're able to taste this one right next to the Catura that we had last month. Same producer, very small quantities, and whereas the last one kind of tasted like apple pie, some cinnamon, some bright apple notes. This one is much more sweet, much more candied fruit, really delicious. And the difference between Via Sarchi and Catura is actually genetically not that much. They're both single gene mutations from their Bourbon parentage. Catura, as we talked about before, was found in Brazil, back in the early 1900s, and this was found in the town of Sarchi in Costa Rica, also in the West Valley, but at much lower elevations, in the 70s. And this is again a smaller plant, but what makes this guy helpful to be grown in this part of Costa Rica is it's actually tolerant to really strong winds.
Yeah, well, winds are a really big deal. When we were there actually in February, on Sumava, actually, it was pretty. We may have mentioned this already, but it's pretty tragic because they had just planted a bunch of SL28 and they had some amazingly strong winds. Actually, the day we were there was ridiculously windy, and the trees had just been ravaged. They were young and not very strong yet, and so wind is a significant thing.
Yeah, you really have to be careful about which varieties you plant where, because individual conditions and even little plots of land. The SL28 plot was destroyed, whereas there was a geisha plot beside it that was totally fine.
Yeah, it was totally fine. Yeah, one thing to note too is that you may not know, just generally speaking, one healthy tree yields approximately about 1 pound of green coffee a year, which is actually not very much when you think about the amount of work and effort that it goes into that. And so these smaller trees, I think, are beneficial in a lot of ways, right? It's kind of like an apple tree, right? You can have big apple trees that there's a lot of fruit stuck up the top of the apple tree that you're never going to get unless it falls off the tree and then you've damaged it. And that's kind of the way it was with some of the initial varieties of coffee, Bourbon and Typica, tall, langy trees, and you have to bend the branches down to pick the cherries, where these smaller trees are much more, they're almost like dwarf trees, and they're much easier to harvest off of, so you can be more effective in terms of picking the cherry when it's ripe. And it actually helps even just in terms of general maintenance on the farm, because if you allow cherry to fall onto the floor and leave it there, while you think it might sort of serve as fertilizer, it actually contributes to pests and disease on the farm as well. So cherry that actually falls off the trees needs to be picked up, which is labor you don't want to do as well, right? So yeah, a little fact about size.
And the point of this project is to find exciting examples of these varieties and of unique varieties and unique processes. And this really stood out to me on the cupping table when I was in Costa Rica selecting the coffees for this program. And being able, and I got to taste it right next to Milagros Catura, and it was really interesting. You get the same complexity, the same level of complexity, really, really, really intricate acids, but the balance of each was totally different, and it really stood out compared to all the other Caturas and Via Sarchis that I tasted.
Huh, cool.
Jordan, can you tell us a little bit about how you brewed it?
Sure, Josh. We used a Kalita Wave dripper for this one. I thought that would be a cool choice because this coffee, having less of a bright acid and more of a complex sweetness, I thought that would hopefully highlight that more in the brew.
Cool.
And I use 25 grams of coffee to 400 mils of water. Classic 60 grams a liter recipe. Took just over 3 minutes.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You don't have to brew these coffees in like crazy special ways.
No.
These are that's one of the cool things about coffee is that once you like get like a method or a recipe that you like, you can get good results. But by tweaking, if you really want to get nerdy about it, you can tweak your style of pour over or switch to an immersion brew to like change the focus of the flavors.
Totally, absolutely. Yeah, I'm lazy, so I brew on a Technivorm every morning, and it does a pretty amazing job. That's why we sell them, because they brew hot and fast and make really tasty coffee. I don't have the patience to do what Jordan does doing this, but some of you do, and it's a great way to brew. I think if you're careful and you're consistent. Obviously, Jordan's using a scale and weighing things, and while that sounds a little bit nerdy, it definitely aids in brewing a consistent and tasty cup for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you guys think of this? I think it tastes like dried peaches and dried apricots.
Very sweet.
It's really sweet. It's really actually sweet coffee, and that's not very. It's not too bright, which is really nice.
And that's a variety characteristic.
Yeah.
Like Via Sarchi does not make like high acid the way that Katura does.
Yeah.
It's really hard to pinpoint, variety specific flavors in a lot of cases because, so many different styles of growing, so many different climates all over the world, so many different like styles of processing and roasting, and aging. Like it's really not easy to control, but I think that this is a great example of showing that difference.
Totally. Yeah, it's not often we get two different varieties side by side from one producer, right? So it's a good example of the characteristic of a variety versus where it's grown, for sure.
100%.
Cool. So do we know what's next?
We do. We're going to stick with the same mill, Sumava de Lourdes, which is actually named after a park in the Czech Republic. So that's why it doesn't sound Spanish. And we're going to actually we'll go to the Sumava farm, the El Centro plot. It's going to be a naturally processed Caturra. We'll have some information, and we'll be able to show you how they approach producing naturals and actually producing their honeys as well. It's actually one of the most meticulously laid out and well thought out plots for processing that I've ever seen. It's really cool, and it's going to be a Caturra, which means it's going to be bright. It's going to have the brightness of that Caturra, but it's going to have like that deep fruity sweetness that you would get from a natural process. So it's going to be a nice contrast to both the earlier Caturra and this Via Sarchi.
Nice.
Yeah, and so we're going to be able to taste, the difference between the processing, which is really cool.
Cool. All right. Well, until next time, happy holidays. Enjoy time with your friends and family. Drink amazing coffee over the holidays. Savor it. Eat some great food. Drink some good wine. And we'll see you in the new year.
Happy holidays.